Oh, what a meeting of the minds this is. Daniel Harford and the legend Mickey McGuane here in the studio. How are we, gents?
Really well, guys. Absolute pleasure to be here. Harf and also Michael. Can't wait for the AFL footy season to get underway. And we saw a snapshot of some exciting talent over the last 4 or 5 days, even though it's in match simulation. But it's always very, very dangerous to go off half-cocked at this stage of the year. It's a bit like dancing with your sister, I reckon.
Last time I got to work with Mick, he was coaching me at the Mighty Ball and Tigers many moons ago in 2007, the Mighty coach.
Did you? What was his most redeeming character as a player when you were his coach?
Oh, Harf was very clever. We wanted the ball in his hands. Very good decision maker, good organiser on the ground. Had to get him fitter. But when he was fit, like all of us, you can certainly play the game. And we saw his AFL career once he got the ball in his hand. He generally done some damage with it. I suppose I sit back and watch a lot of footy now. I think that's one thing that I question in the AFL landscape is the creativity of players nowadays. The instinct and the footy intuition, I think, is getting coached out of some players, and they certainly second guess themselves. But I just love seeing a Colby McKercher come on the scene, watch him train, watch him play, and the creativity. He understands what he's doing next before he gets the ball in his hand. That's a prerequisite. And then once he does get it, because he already knows what's happening next, he brings other teammates into the game, puts them into space. And I just think those creative players that I'm using Daniel as an example of, that's why they're very important to a footy team.
Everything's so structured these days, Mick. It's difficult to break out of that mode. You've got to have a licence from the coach to say, right, you go and do your thing a bit, and we'll wear the consequences. Glenn Maxwell style in cricket, you go and do your thing because you're really good at it, and sometimes it's not going to work, but you'll create a lot of opportunities for us if you do it more often than not.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you look at it and you say to yourself, well, okay, go through some of the clubs right now, and the winger's role is a lot different to what it used to be. You've got to keep your width, you're sliding up and down the ground, a lot of unrewarded running. But some really good wingers could play in front of the ball. And I'll use, say, Curtis Taylor at North Melbourne as an example of that. I saw that kid since 12 play in front of the ball, makes Vic Metro, highly touted draft pick, goes pick mid-40s to North Melbourne. Now they're trying to probably realign him to a winger's role. But I still think sometimes you've got to get drafted into the system. Don't forget what got you in there. And it was his forward instincts that really made him a separator of games because he could catch it, convert a goal, could win it at ground level. But now that he's out there playing a significant role with width and shape, you lose what he's actually good at. So I think there's also merit in coaches who can identify what a player's good at and revert that probably dialogue back to the player and just go and play him in an area of the ground that makes him good again.
If you want to ask Harf or Mickey McGuane a question about the season, how you think your team will go, make sure you give us a text 0416 90 50 52. We might do a team that goes through the roof and a team that dives, because history tells us, gents, that the last 5 or 6 years we've had Port Adelaide 11th to 3rd, Collingwood the year before 17th to 4th, Melbourne 9th to 1st. Port Adelaide 10th to 1st, Brisbane 15th to 2nd, Collingwood 13th to 3rd. There's always a bolter or a team that finishes outside the 8th that rockets into the 8th. Have you got an idea, Harf, as to who that could be this year?
Well, I mean, for me, it's got to be Essendon. It has to be Essendon. They finished 12th last year, 11 wins, so a game outside of the 8 in terms of wins. But it has to be with what they've done with their list and what they've added in terms of experience, Mick. You bring in Dersma, Goldstein, Gresham, Mackay as the 4 sort of key experienced players come in, and Caddy comes in as a top 10 draft pick, and has already shown signs from all the people that I talked to at Essendon that he's going to be an absolute monster in that forward half for them. They have loaded up. People talk about Port Adelaide loading up and going all in this year. Essendon have done the same thing. For me, they're the ones that have to jump in, I reckon, on the back of what they've done in the off-season.
Yeah, they have to, and it's time. And I think there's a lot of restless Indians out there in the stands that are saying, where are we and what do we stand for and what is our brand going to look like? I didn't like what I saw after quarter time. I must
Match sim wouldn't have helped their confidence.
Well, you've kicked 5 goals 10 against a team that we know with Ross Lyon coach are going to get strangled. And I just felt their ball movement was very stilted and stifled. There was lack there. They're putting Martin back behind the ball to give him some sort of kickstart off of the back line with Redmond and a bit of McGrath. Heppel will probably play there. Alongside you, Reed, who didn't play, but also McKay, who's been recruited, and Laverty will be the 7th. And then in front of the ball, you say to yourself, well, what's it going to look like? Because with Goldstein coming in, you can't play Goldstein, Draper and Wright in the same team with Stringer in the front half. So they've got to make a decision there. And right now, Draper's injury will say, Goldstein, you'll get the green light for round one, and rightfully so, because I've watched them train regularly. And they're on top of the deck. Goldstein's just an ultimate professional. He'll bring a hard edge to the midfield group, which they have to have and get first look at the footy. In that practice match 2 Saturdays ago, he kicked two first quarter goals and pushed hard forward. So there's an old bit of language we use, Michael, in terms of AFL footy, DTL down the line. And obviously with Peter Wright being the sole tall in front of the ball with Langford, that's where Goldstein can slide forward with the athleticism he's got, and he can contribute to that down-the-line kick. Because a lot of teams are actually playing the Richmond way still in terms of getting to contest, getting a plethora of ground-level support there, trying to win it at ground level with either your ability to win it but also put pressure on if you don't, and try to lock it in front half game, which is important.
So Brad Scott's talked about trying to fix up the defence, and last year it couldn't quite work. It was transition defence. Ben Rutten, that cost him the job effectively a couple of years ago, was one of the main reasons. Brad Scott comes in, try and solidify that. Didn't quite work last year, and even on Friday, Mick, it looked pretty shabby. That transition defence against St Kilda at RSCA Park, that was a disaster.
Yeah, and it's always going to test you training out there, because I was assistant coach down there in 06, and it's not overly big with width and whatnot, so it helps the tight squeezing defensive compact zone defence, which obviously St Kilda have under Ross, and they really squeeze the ground aggressively. But it really tests your opposition's ball movement. And if you aren't good at it, you'll get tested, and as we know, about 65% of scores come from turnover. You can't use the footy and you fuel the opposition on the back of turnover, you'll get scored against, and that's one thing Essendon have to master.
So Bombers are $2.75 to make the 8 half. If you want to,
well, I think you have to take it because they've gone all in. I'm not sure it's going to happen, by the way, but they have to. In my view, from a close perspective, Mick's right about the natives. There's a few restless ones floating around. If they don't get there, they're in trouble.
Who's your outside the 8 improver?
I think the Adelaide Crows are nearly ready.
They probably should have finished in the 8.
Yeah. I'm concerned. There's one element that really is the disclaimer there, I suppose, is their back end, key defenders. That's their concern. They've lost Duday to Brisbane, of course. Nick Murray's done a knee. He won't get back till halfway during the year. Jordan Butts has got that foot/now hamstring that he did 3 weeks ago. So from a key defensive stocks point of view, they're going to be tested initially. To win the ball back, I love defenders that can catch the footy and then win the ball back, those interceptors we call them nowadays, and then fuel your attack on the back of winning the footy back is a way to kickstart your offence. And I'm just concerned what they've got behind the ball. In front of the ball, no question. They've got 3 really dynamic forwards who you can trust in Walker. Thilthorpe, I think, will have a breakout year. Fogarty had that last year. Can he put 2 together? That's the big question mark. But they're medium-sized to small forwards in Rankin and Rochelle. I like McHenry because he's busy. He kicked 3 on the weekend against Port Adelaide. Looked really good. Keys gives great effort. They've got some class in that area of the ground, and it looks like they're going to use Pedler through the midfield, which I think's a plus because he's a one-touch player. Left-footer changes the dynamic in there. So I think they've got the numbers through the midfield to provide enough opportunity in front of the ball. It's just whether they can defend transition from an opposition standpoint and then win the ball back in their back end. That's the area it's probably going to be tested.
All right, so you're Adelaide with the improver, halves with the Bombers. Who's the one that's going to drop out of the 8 from last year, be the disappointment?
It's a good question.
Yeah,
you go through last year's 8, Mick. You got Collingwood, Brisbane, Port and Melbourne in your top 4.
Yep.
You can't see any of them dropping out, you wouldn't think. Carlton, St Kilda, the Giants and Sydney.
Yeah, if it was
It's
out
a good
of
8.
I like St Kilda, but they might be the one, just for me.
Yeah, it's a big jump last year.
Yeah, I thought they made rapid. He's a good coach. Like Ross just knows what he wants, gets what he wants, demands excellence and effort. And if you don't provide that, in the first 2 years, generally you see spikes wherever he's gone. So I might be risky, but St Kilda have to do it, on the bigger grounds against the better opposition. I haven't had a good look at their draw to see who they play twice as opposed to who they play once. But if they have the draw opened up, they can certainly play finals footy under his tutelage. And we saw them, introduced to a couple of new players on the weekend. Young Garcia looks like a likely type on the back of an injury to one of their players. He comes on and shares midfield duties. He went to 10 centre bounces in the first quarter alongside Jack Steele and other experienced players like Seb Ross. So That to me shows the coaching staff has identified what his strength is and not shy to put him in there right from the first, more or less, practice match in match simulation.
That's actually a really good point. In the modern day, the kids that come in and have the big reputations and are key players in certain areas of the ground, they're getting looks in those pivotal roles. They're not coming in as the fringe players. Like I remember my first couple of years, I was playing forward pocket next to Jason Dunstall.
Yeah.
I never played forward pocket in my life. And before I got to the AFL system. So they're not being pushed aside. They're giving the chance to play in the roles that they know straight up.
And I love that in coaches, in the view that you identify right why you've drafted him, what you may need from a needs basis recruitment. But don't lose sight of the fact and don't get concerned with the birth certificate. If he's good at what he does and you've recruited him for that very reason, put him into that area of the ground that makes you better. Now, Sanders is one example. He had 9 or 10 touches in the first quarter, kicked a goal from outside 50. He looked like he'd played 100 games. How composed he was with the footy in an area of the ground. We know they had some of their A-grade talent on the sidelines in the early part of that game. But if you put Bontempelli, Treloar, Liberatore, McRae, these types of guys roll through there, it'd be really good if you can get that right.
All right, we're about to go to Shepparton for the second half. I'm going to get your downward team this year. After that, there's a few SMSs coming through, and we'll get on to the top 8 and Premiership contender, or the Premiership winner. Will it be Pies back-to-back? Could it be the Blues? We'll find out after the second at Shep. Who are you not into this year as far as the top 8 is concerned? Who drops out in your book?
Oh, well, I was going to say the Saints as well. They're the one that I think are vulnerable. But I just think it's going to be so hard to get in. I mean, I'll see the Bulldogs out from last year, and they've added some players. If I was going to go outside St Kilda, I think that the problem is going to be for the Giants to back it up. I think the Giants had a hell of a run last year.
They had a massive run, didn't they?
Yeah, and the great energy and adrenaline that comes with that, and great belief, I reckon, Mick, which is what most clubs want, most sides want, certainly at the start of a season. I just wonder if they can back it up. But I did say this about Collingwood last year, and I got that wrong. Collingwood backed it up all right from the previous year and went on to win the Premiership. So, I mean, I think it's going to be so hard, so competitive in that sort of 6 to 12, 14 bracket even, I reckon, Mick, on the ladder. That I don't know. There will be a slider, but I'm watching the Giants and St Kilda. They're the two teams I'm watching.
Morning, Mick. I'm a Carlton supporter. I'm worried about our injury list already. Do Carlton need a full season out of Sam Walsh to be a threat?
Oh, absolutely. He's their barometer. A lot of people revert to Cripps, and rightfully so, because Paddy's been an inside bull for a long period of time. But this other bloke just gives them two-way running. He gives them accumulation of the footy. He just works hard and he sets the barometer and standards for his teammates to follow. One thing I'll never question about Sam Walsh is his effort to the contest, both sides of the ball. Whereas Paddy, offensively great, defensively has to be seriously challenged on a consistent basis, because he does become a walker out of stoppage, and that is one part of the game you've got to get right after you lose first possession around the numbers. Well,
let's cut to the chase then, hey? Who wins the Premiership in 2024? The Pies are $5 favourites. Brisbane, $6. GWS, $8.
Yep.
Sydney, $9. Carlton, $9. And Melbourne at $10.
It's an interesting one because, as I spoke to Matty when I come back from Queensland, I went and watched Gold Coast train and also Brisbane, and they were different stages of their prep. One was up and about being the Gold Coast because they started earlier, obviously, and the other mob were in that building phase, and they had a defensive theme the day I went and watched them. And then to see the two teams go head-to-head last week, there's a stark difference between talent and effort. And what I witnessed that night when I was there for the 2 hours they trained for in 37-degree heat, I must say, it was just magnificent to sit back and see their best players not question the work that was given to them. So that, to me, said, as much as last year's loss was disappointing, they're going into this season with a no-regrets attitude. And I've always sort of said, it's a bit like Collingwood, don't adopt, let's go back to back. Let's adopt back to work. And when I saw Brisbane go back to work, I felt this could be their year. So if I have to have a pick, I'll be picking Brisbane to win the flag.
They kind of answered the Melbourne hoodoo last year in the finals as well, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they didn't miss by much, did they?
That's it.
In the biggest day of all.
Yeah.
Like, just didn't have, just ran out of time.
A couple of minutes to go.
Well,
That's how close it was.
Alan Jonesborough just ran out of time.
Yeah.
In the end for the Brisbane Lions, so they'll be absolutely in it. But Collingwood, I reckon Collingwood at $5 are really good value. If that's the market for the Pies, I'm taking a piece of that, because what they showed last year was unbelievable growth through their game, and you would think that with that confidence and that outcome and reward for their effort and the way they train, Mick, I've seen them train a few times as well. They're just a class above from what I've seen, the way they prepare and go about their business. So I think if you're looking for value, $5 for the Pies is really good money. money.
What Daniel does make there is a really valid point. Like, I go and watch clubs and individuals train just as much as the team dynamic to get learnings from that. But when you go down and say, specifically, I'm watching Nick Daicos, right? And then you go and watch a Luke Davies-Uniacke, and you say to yourself, well, here's two players who both play important roles for their clubs. And if there's an area of improvement to say to Luke's game versus where Nick's at, it's work rate consistently at training. I've never seen a kid come onto the stage in AFL footy, except probably for Ben Cousins, when he was at his absolute best as a young player, with an appetite for hard work like this kid. So it's no coincidence he was the only Brownlow medalist for last year, bar injury, he probably would have been. Everyone's talking about his talent that he's got, not only with the ball, he's got to learn a bit more contest, but also without the ball, that we get that. But the work rate that he provides to the rest to say, follow me, is what other good young midfielders have to aspire to be like. I'd love to say, I'll get 6 blokes out of each div club, 1 out of each club that I think can improve, and go and watch Nick Daicos train. If they had the look and see attitude, as opposed to just the look attitude, they would be a better player because of it.
At the other end of the spectrum, there's a market with the tab, least number of wins for the season.
West Coast.
Well, now, this is like we were talking about Mr. Brightsides, just giving away money at $1.50. West Coast at $2.50, equal favourites with North.
Chuck it in your multis.
Yeah, well, they're injury-riddled already.
Yeah.
I admire Adam Simpson, how he conducted himself under an enormous amount of duress last year, to be as composed and as probably single-minded in the same breath, to say not lose track of where you're going, but also not listen to the outside noise, was a credit to him.
But where is he going?
Well, his hands are tied a little bit, mate.
Yeah, he's stuck.
You take your Mercedes-Benz and your Volvos and your best cars out of a showroom and put them in the outer and cop some hail damage, you're going to have an ordinary car yard, aren't you? And it's a bit like that with the West Coast Eagles' best personnel. You know, Nathan Buckley went through a period of time to say, well, he can't coach. But if you put Reid and get Adams on the park more often and some of the best talent that weren't out there, Darcy Moore, etc., it brings you back to the pack pretty quick. And we hear that saying all the time. The healthier best players is your best friend.
Yep.
Now, if Hawthorn lose Brereton and Dunstall in that day, alongside a Platten and a bit of Pritchard and all these great players, they come back to the pack pretty quick. If we lost Daicos or Gavin Brown or Tony Shaw
Mickey
in terms
McGuane.
of leadership, we'd come back to the pack pretty quick. So as soon as you lose your best players, you become a part of the numbers, and that's why health's very important.
Where do you think North will be?
I can't see them going anywhere but 18th.
Are we expecting a decent bit of improvement from North? Last year they got bucked around. But do they need to show some improvement this year?
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. And I think they can. And they've got some really good talent in there, talent and work rate. And Mick's talking about, you've still got to have those elements. And one thing we know about Alistair Clarkson is he demands that work rate. A bit like Ross Lyon, there is a demand of that. We know he's got a system in play. And we saw a really good reward for their effort in the scratchy the other day from the Kangas. I mean, that was a really strong performance against the Pies, albeit a scratchy and all that sort of stuff. But they showed a lot. And they showed that they're going to invest in their kids in the key areas of the ground, so particularly around the contest. And they've shown an appetite to be a part of that and want to take that responsibility, which is what I love watching that game the other day.
Yeah, it's a valid point you make, Half, because around the footy, they probably had to add more depth. And I just love how he's been patient with young Sheasel and also now McKercher. They'll play off half back to give him some sort of offence off that area. The two big concerns for me, undersized defence. They've lost McKay, who's going to replace that. Toby Pink's come over from a South Australian competition who previously was on the Sydney Swans list. And watching him close hand, yeah, he wins the ball, but then is he quick enough to calculate the game, what's in front of him? Has he got the execution skills to kickstart offence? He's quite slow in making decisions. Aidan Core, he's been in and out of the rehab group recently. He's been recruited down from GWS to fill that void, but they've just lacked some monsters down back. So Tom Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron, the big forwards of the competition might monster their defenders. Their undersized defenders are probably going to be asked to do too much. And the other one is their ruck stocks. Tristan Xerri is rucking at the moment. Is he a ruckman? Or is he a more forward relief ruck? So that's something that Clarko will have to be challenged with, because losing Goldstein, who I think has been a premier ruckman of the competition for a long period of time and hasn't been sold that way because of others in Gawn, etc. Grundy, when he was at his best, of course, probably took that mantle. But I think they're the biggest issues that Clarko has to be challenged with. I love the look of Larkey. He's a star. I've never seen Zerhart as fit as what he is. I reckon he's changed his diet, changed his attitude, got to work. He's as streamlined as what Jordan De Goey is. Tattoos on his body, but looks fit and covering the ground. So we might see 40 goals from him. If you get 70 again from Larkey, they're going to kick some scores. But it's those ruck stocks and also key back stocks that concerns me.
Yeah, lot to like it. I think what we saw last week against the Pies gives them impetus going forward. I mean, they gained an enormous amount from that. Now, the Pies couldn't give a rat's, in fairness, about what that result was. But North Melbourne, that was important to show.
So it wasn't a Premiership hangover?
Not yet. Not yet. If I'm taking $5, yeah.
Well, you put 12 of them players out the deck.
Yeah, that's it.
She's a different team.
Hey, let's try and do an early. We'll get the vault ready here, can we, Al? Because we'll play this back at the end of the year. And for the punters out there who like an early little flutter, give us half your Brownlow medal winner for 2024.
Brownlow medal winner will be Nick Daicos. That's not really reinventing anything there.
You can get $5.
Can I?
Yeah.
Daicos into the Pies, 25s.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. I'm coming for that. Thank you. No, I think he's set to explode. We saw an unbelievable year from him second year. Like it's hard to fathom what he did last year as a second year player. And I remember seeing him as an under 16 at Collingwood when I was doing a little bit of work with their father-son academy. Funnily enough, called the Daicos Academy. He had his own academy at that stage. And I saw this kid come in, and I thought, bloody hell, who is this? Clearly knew who it was, but he had something I've never seen in a junior player. And to be able to replicate that at the big time. Often you can have those as a junior player, and you get the AFL, and you just become an ordinary player, good ordinary player, Jack Dyer style. But he has excelled to become a superstar in such a short period of time. And the thing that Mick said before is the reason why, because he's a hungry little fella. He wants to work hard. He wants to be the best, and he knows he can be, which is even better. And I reckon he will be this year.
Yeah, I've got Nick Daicos as a Brownlow medalist as well. The biggest challenge for him, as we witnessed a couple of times last year, that he didn't like, and I can't believe it, coaches don't apply it more often against the opposition's best, to put a close checking midfielder or run with player with him. To get someone to live in your shadow, and Harf's experienced it, I had experienced it as well, it changes your dynamic, and you think you have to outrun as opposed to just play the game and get support from your teammates to, put a step in across to give you that 1 metre. Good players only need 1 metre. Good players only need a foot. Once the ball's in their hand, they can calculate, see it and execute it. And if Nick Daicos can overcome getting smothered, that'll be another advancement into his game to make him greater. Right now, in time and space, which is still the game, which has been there for 100 years, he finds time, he knows where the space is, and once he gets the footy, he executes it as good as anyone has seen in the second year, as Half spoke about. So I think he stands out. He'll continue to get 35 most weeks until Hawthorn, like Mitchell, puts a checker on him and keeps him well and truly under control. But I think that is probably what he has to accept that will come. But I can't believe that coaches don't do it more often.
Well, you can go take the $5 to the bank, punters. Nick Daicos, Walsh and Bontempelli next best in the market at $11 in the Brownlow. What about the Rising Star, gents? Have you found one? Are you the trial watchers for you here, Mickey?
I'm in the corner of Colby McKercher. I mentioned his name earlier, Michael. Obviously, can't get the West Coast Eagles and see what Harley Reid's doing up close and personal. But, gee, I love this kid. He's just exquisite, reads it, wins it, clean, ground ball, high ball, happy to intercept. And once he gets it, he wants to run forward with the footy. He's got that lateral ball movement to give you some time, that extra second to make a decision. But he'll run at defences, and once he runs at defences, generally things will happen because his execution piece, that part that's so important in footy still today, he'll find a teammate in a better position, which generally will have a high impact on the scoreboard. He'll be a great score involvement type of player, or halfback.
He's $6, Colby McKercher. Harley Reid's a $3 favourite in the Rising Star, and George Wardlaw, $4.50.
Yeah, still eligible. Important for the North Melbourne and Rising Star punters out there. Still eligible, Georgie, the Warlord, and he'll be in the mix too. I've got a bit outside. I keep hearing, I haven't seen him up live as an AFL player. I saw him in under 18s and at school. Nate Caddy. He's at $18, I think, at the tab. And if you want to have a bit of a play for a bit more of a spec, he's going to be a really important part of Essendon going forward, I reckon, and literally and figuratively going forward on the ground, but also what they can achieve in the next couple of years. And he's such a beast. He's a competitive animal. I was talking to someone inside the camp last week, and they have never seen a guy be able to get separation from really experienced players and create space and create opportunity on the back of that, like Nate's done. So I think it's a bit of an $18 value selection. It's not bad if you got $1 for a back of the couch.
Half, have you got the market up there in front of you?
I do.
Young Will Graham, is he there? from the Gold Coast Suns.
Will Graham, at this stage, from what I can see,
He's probably out of the market.
He's out. He'll be deep. I'll find him, Mick. He's $81.
$81.
This bloke might be worth a $5 bet. I reckon he's a 200 game player.
Gee.
Watched him like half back, where Dimmer was using him in match sim. Incredibly composed, just got a smart head for an 18-year-old on his shoulders. I reckon he'll be exposed to AFL footy pretty quickly, and don't be surprised he has a really good, impactful year.
All right, there's a little bit of value there. We'll take that to the bank. We're about to head out to Shep for race 3. On the other side, I'll ask you who'll win the Coleman. All right, race 3, numbers 1, 7 and 3. Dr. Falcor getting the cash at $1.70. We're almost out of time, boys, but I want to get your thoughts in the Coleman. Nick Larkey was a brilliant season last season for North. If you think they're going to improve, he could be half a chance again. Just having a look at the market here in the Coleman. Charlie Curnow, $6. Jeremy Cameron, $8. Nick Larkey, $9. Maxi King, $12. Who would you be backing, Mick?
Charlie Curnow.
Yep.
I reckon he'll go back-to-back Colemans, providing he stays healthy. He's got enough residual fitness and body of work to suggest he's overcome those injuries of a few years ago. I reckon this guy is exciting. He wants the footy in his hands. He wants the responsibility that comes with goal kicking. I reckon he's starting to work in tandem with McKay a lot better than what they initially did, because they hadn't played a lot of footy together alongside each other. And the other thing that I think will spur him on to having a magnificent year was a disappointing final series. Good competitors, those that want to win, they always reflect on their last game, because you're only as good as it was. And I reckon he was really disappointing in the finals campaign. He'd know that. The club knows that. The supporters would understand that. And I reckon that'd be burning deep inside him to make sure that's a trigger to make sure he has a really strong year in 2024.
I'm on the Larkey train. Who doesn't love a silver Larkey, just by the way? But I'm on the Larkey train. His year was fabulous last year. Limited opportunities, and hopefully the way that I think they're going to progress, they'll get more opportunities in their forward half. Clearly, he's going to be the one defensively try and shut down because of his dominance last year. But I just think with more flow, more ball movement, opportunities for him, he gets the ball inside forward 50, doesn't miss. So I think enough opportunity for him. He can be absolutely up there again. And at $9, I'll take a piece of that.
Gee, gents, it's been outstanding getting your pre-season analysis. It's going to be maybe a little bit of history repeating. Brisbane, Collingwood, and the same guns fighting out the major awards. Hey, Mick, I'm looking forward to doing this every Monday with you at this time. We'll be reviewing and previewing each round of the season here at 11:30 every Monday.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Michael.
We're going to get you in for the big moments of the season.
Wow, that's important. And don't forget Jordan Lewis back as part of the team on Monday mornings on breakfast as well.
Outstanding.
4-time Premiership superstar.
He is. It's past your bedtime, Harf. Thank you for hanging around. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Look forward to it.
All right, that's it for me as well. We'll see you 8:30 on Racing Pulse. Enjoy a day at the races on RSN.